and welcome back to another card making video. Today is all about interactive cards, and we will be recreating this fun birthday card using the Dancin Grim die from Spellbinders. The fun interactive portion of this card is the body of the Grim swings back and forth when you shake the card from side to side. Now, you don't need to use your finger. I'm just doing that for video's sake, so I'm not shaking the card around, and I just wanted to give you an idea of what it'll look like. I will be using my Distress Oxide inks to ink blend our background, starting with the color Rustic Wilderness, Twisted Citron, and Mowed Lawn. Starting with the color Twisted Citron and a blending brush, we're going to go ahead and ink blend the center portion of the card. I'm also going to use a generous amount of ink when creating this background. Again, coming back in with the Twisted Citron and making sure I'm getting enough color to make the center nice and vibrant. Once I'm happy with the Twisted Citron, I'm going to come in with the Mowed Lawn, and I'm going to ink blend the outer portion of the card, blending into the Twisted Citron and making sure I'm getting a nice blend between the two colors. I'm also going to bring in a Post-it note. This will help me make sure I do not get ink all over my fingers as I'm rotating my panel. I do find that rotating my panel as I ink blend around the edges is super helpful. So now that I'm done with the Mowed Lawn off screen, I do wipe off my blending brush because I'm going to go back in with a lighter color, which is the Twisted Citron, to make sure that I'm getting a nice blend between the two colors. Once I'm happy with the two color blends, I'm going to come in with the Rustic Wilderness to really add depth to the background. And I'm going to go ahead and use the Rustic Wilderness and apply the ink all over the outside edges. And then I'm going to go back and forth between all three colors to help with the harsh lines and to make sure I have a seamless blend between all three colors. I don't show it in the camera frame, but every time I switch between the colors, I do wipe off my blending brush on a paper towel, and I am using the same blending brush for all three colors. And at this point, my panel is heavily saturated with ink. Distress Oxides are pigment ink and dye ink fusion, which also allows for easy blending. So if you struggle with ink blending, I'd highly recommend switching to Distress Oxides. So I'm loving how our background is turning out. However, I did want to add more depth to the card, so I brought in my blending brush that has black soot on it, and I'm just using leftover ink that's already on the brush. I'm not dipping my brush back into my ink pad. And so just using some water in a spray bottle, I'm going to go ahead and clean up my work surface. And now we're going to go ahead and apply the bats. Now this is a stencil from Pretty Pink Posh. This stencil is a 3-piece layering stencil set called Spooky Sky. So now I'm going to bring in my black soot, and I'm going to actually switch to a smaller blending brush since the bats are a lot smaller. I could use a larger blending brush, but I didn't think I needed to since the images are small and my small blending brushes work really well for covering small areas. And then I'm going to bring in a paper towel again to make sure I'm not getting ink all over my fingertips. That's looking super cute. And for the larger gapped areas, I'm just going to move the stencil around and add a few bats to make sure that I have even coverage all over the front of my panel. Since Distress Oxide inks are water reactive, I'm going to bring in a spray bottle and gently spritz the front of my panel, and then I will take a paper towel to help dry up some of the excess water. I also want to add some shimmer to our background, so I'm going to bring in my Distress Mica Stain and the color Ominous Twilight. Now with Mica Stain, because it does settle at the bottom of the bottle, you want to make sure that you shake your mica stains really well. And then I'm just going to add a few drops to my acrylic block using a paintbrush. I'm just going to go ahead and start splattering all over the front of my card. And right now it doesn't look like there is a lot of shimmer because the mica stain is wet. However, once it dries, you'll definitely see all the added shimmer. It is hard to capture the shimmer on camera, but I will kind of bring it up and tilt it in the light to see if I can show off some of that shimmery goodness. So now we're going to create the layering piece of our card using Dusty Concord and Villainous Potion. I'm going to start off with a Dusty Concord, and I am going to ink blend all around the edges of my card panel. And I don't need to ink blend the center of the card because our layering piece is going to go into the center, so there's no point of ink blending the entire panel. Just kind of saves some time. And once I'm done ink blending with the Dusty Concord, I am going to use the same blending brush, wipe it off on a paper towel, and then for added depth, bring in the Villainous Potion. And I'll also switch between the two colors to make sure I get a nice seamless blend between the two. Again, this process is super easy when using Distress Oxide inks since they blend so well together. Once I'm happy with the way that the two colors are blending together, I will now switch to my spider webs, another pretty pink posh layering stencil. It is a 2-piece layering stencil called Spider Webs. I'm also going to use a pouncer this time to add white pigment ink from Hero Arts. It is Hero Arts Unicorn White Pigment Ink. And I don't want to contaminate my ink pad since it is white with the purple, so I'm going to actually smush some ink onto my glass surface and then use my pouncer to pick up the ink from the glass work surface and apply that directly onto my spider webs. Once I'm done applying the ink with my pouncer, I'm going to gently lift up my stencil since the white ink is pigment ink, so it does stay wet longer than dye inks. And then this is what my panel or what my card is going to look like, and I think that's super cute. Now it is time to assemble our Grim. I did die cut all my pieces off screen to save some time, and normally I use glitter cardstock, but for some reason I did not have orange in my glitter cardstock, so I will need to cut out my Grim twice, once out of the glitter paper and then a second time out of white cardstock for added stability, since this is an interactive card and I want to make sure that it doesn't fall apart when the recipient is swinging the card back and forth. To adhere everything together, I am using my Gina K Designs Connect liquid adhesive in a fine tip applicator bottle, and I will go ahead and add some music while I assemble our Grim. this point, you could leave the Grim the way that he was designed, but I thought to make him a little bit more whimsical, I guess, I thought I'd bring in my pretty pink posh black onyx pearls and add them to his eyes. I thought it made him a little less spooky, but that is something that you don't need to do. I just thought he looked really cute adding some eyeballs to him. So we'll go ahead and set him off to the side and work on our sentiment using my mini Misti and the Dancing Halloween sentiments from Spellbinders. I'm going to go ahead and heat emboss our sentiment. I will have to fussy cut my sentiment since I don't have the die, and I don't believe this stamp set comes with a coordinating die. I could be wrong. If it does come with a coordinating die, I will go ahead and list that down in the description box below, along with all the other products that I use in this video. Again, since we're heat embossing, I will go ahead and prep my cardstock using an anti-static powder tool. And I haven't used this stamp before, so I will go ahead and prep the stamp by rubbing my finger along the stamp to make sure that I get a really good impression. Using my Versamark ink, which is a clear sticky ink, I'm going to go ahead and stamp my sentiment, but I'm not going to press very hard because I don't want to distort the letters since the letters are kind of small and dainty. If I press too hard, I run the risk of distorting my words. So I'm going to go ahead and sprinkle on some white embossing powder. And I will heat set using my heat tool. So off camera, I will preheat my heat tool to make sure I get it nice and hot before bringing it to my embossing powder. And that'll just help with making sure I get less warping of my paper. To help remove some of the anti-static powder that's on my black cardstock, I will go ahead and take my tidy towel and gently wipe away the excess powder. And now it's time to assemble my card. So I'm going to go ahead and bring in my first panel, which is the spider webs, and then I'm going to go ahead and glue my layering piece to my card base using liquid glue. So now it's time to glue on the spider web. My spider web is cut out of vellum, and vellum can be a little tricky when adding glue or any type of adhesive to, since no matter what you use, you will see the adhesive through the vellum. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to only add a small dot of glue to the corner of the spider web, and I will cover that up using one of my bats. I did cut my bats out of black glitter cardstock, and the bats and the spider web are from Lawn Fawn. It's part of their Scalloped Treat Box Haunted House add-on die set. And now I am lining up the body of my Grim to his face, just so I can see the spacing before I add on my 3D foam circle. And that's what's going to help allow the body to swing back and forth. I'm going to place him right in the center of our card, and then I'm going to glue down a few additional bats. I'm only going to place glue in the center of the bats because I kind of want to raise the wings a little bit just for some dimension. I know that if I put this in an envelope, it'll probably smush them down, but I thought that they were cute to kind of zhuzh them up a little bit. And then I'm going to swing the body back and forth to make sure that the bats don't interfere with the motion of his robe. So before I glue him down, I did notice that my spider web was still sticking up a little too much. So I thought, okay, how can I attach the web without showing my adhesive? And that was by cutting out another bat. So now I'll bring in my sentiment. And again, I did have to fussy cut this. And to be honest, I did not do a very good job at fussy cutting, but it's okay. It'll do. I didn't want to redo it. So I'm like, this will work just fine. Before I glue it down, I am going to adhere my Grim. This will help with the placement of my sentiment. And I did add some liquid adhesive to the back of my 3D foam circle, and that was to help kind of move him around to make sure he's in the perfect placement, and again swinging his body back and forth, making sure that the bats don't interfere with the motion of his robe. And then now I'll go ahead and adhere my sentiment. I thought about using 3D foam squares, but I really didn't want to take away from the Grim since he is kind of the star of the show. So I opted to not use 3D foam squares and then just glue it straight to my panel. And look at how cute he is. He turned out awesome. I love it. So once I'm done with my scene, I will go ahead off screen and glue these to a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch top folding or side folding card base, and that will complete today's card project. I would love it if you would like and subscribe to my channel. It really helps. And to all my existing subscribers, thank you so much for your continued support. And until next time, bye.